Hey folks, good morning and welcome to another episode of Motorcyclist MC Commute. Today we're going to be riding Triumph Motorcycles 2021 Daytona 765 Moto2 Limited Edition. Wow, that's a mouthful. This is Triumph's new street legal Moto2 replica sport bike. And we're going to tell you what it's like to ride in today's review. Well, folks, here it is, Triumph Motorcycles 2021 Daytona 765 Moto2 Limited Edition. This is a new motorcycle that Triumph unveiled for the 2020 model year. It's designed to be a street legal Moto2 replica. We all know Triumph moved to the official engine supplier in the Moto2 World Championship. The previous engine supplier was Honda with its 4-cylinder engine. Now we have a 3-cylinder engine that displaces 765 cc that powers this vehicle. Now, to really understand this bike, you have to back up to the original Daytona 675 sport bike. That was a motorcycle that Triumph introduced in 2006, 16 years ago. That motorcycle lived for 10 years and it eventually was faded away for the 2016 model year. Now, this bike differs from the Daytona 675R that went away in 2016 with the use of its larger displacement engine, all carbon fiber bodywork, including a solo tail section with no passenger accommodations. This bike also includes a larger TFT dash display, which we'll show you guys here in a little bit. And it also has Brembo's awesome Stylema radial mount 4-piston calipers. I love these calipers. It also includes a fancy aero exhaust, which we will show on the other side of the bike later. This bike includes all of Triumph's latest and greatest rider safety aids, albeit Triumph's electronics package is a little bit more rudimentary compared to other sport bike manufacturers these days, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So I'm going to stop talking and swing a leg over this thing and tell you what it's like to ride.
All right, folks, here we are on Triumph's 2021 Daytona 765 Moto2 Limited Edition, and we have a mechanical key embossed with Triumph's Union Jack logo. I love it. I love it. Let's put the key in, push the starter button, and away we go. Now, hopping on this motorcycle is like getting reacquainted with an old friend. I've spent tons of time on this motorcycle over the last decade plus with the Daytona 675 and then Daytona 675R. And the ergonomics on this motorcycle, I always have liked. This bike is nice and slim between the rider's legs. The clip-on style handlebars aren't too low, they aren't too high. They definitely are a little bit aggressive. You can tell that this bike is more track orientated, but it definitely isn't that uncomfortable for street use. The windshield could be a little bit taller, but you can still tuck in behind it when you're riding this bike at the track and doing things like that. We didn't ride this bike at the racetrack this time. Our loan wasn't long enough for us to facilitate that type of riding in that environment, but maybe next time. Back to the ergonomics. This bike is a good sport bike for street use. It just has a good degree of comfort. The seat itself, yes, it's tall, but it's not too tall where I can't stand flat-footed or sit flat-footed at a stop. Seat also has a little bit of it's canted forward in a little bit more aggressive manner than other sport bike motorcycles. And away we go. Cable actuated clutch harnesses the power of this 765 cc i3. That's right, this engine has been increased in terms of displacement. So previously it was 675 displacement and now it's 765 cc. The inner workings of the engine have been modified versus Triumph's street 765s. The camshafts are different, the cylinder head's different, and many of the engine's top-end components have been modified. The crankshaft is also different. Now, this was done to keep this motorcycle as a more sporty sport bike style bike, where the Triumph Street Triple is a moderate naked street bike. This thing is meant for sport and track riding. Hence why the Moto2 World Championship has partnered with Triumph for engine supply on their Moto2 bikes. Now, this i3, I've always liked this Triumph i3. This bike, when Triumph released it for the 2006 model year, it really was a game changer. It made for a vehicle that was more compact and narrow in terms of width. It also had a lot more punch, a lot more bottom and mid-range punch. And realistically, Triumph and their 675cc engine is the powertrain that really got the other manufacturers to jump on the 3-cylinder bandwagon, i.e. Yamaha, i.e. MV Agusta. And if it wasn't for Triumph, we probably wouldn't have those awesome 3-cylinder power plants that we have today. Now, not only is this engine full of torque, full of good usable power, but just the sound of it. The sound of this motorcycle is just totally awesome. From the first moment I opened up the throttle and held her wide for a few moments, all of my euphoric memories of riding this bike 10 years ago just flooded my brain. I'm like, oh my god, I forgot how awesome this thing is. And Triumph truly has something special with this engine. It's so fun, it sounds so awesome. Triumph has added ride-by-wire throttle on this motorcycle. So the previous Daytona 675R did not have ride-by-wire. Now, Triumph's been doing ride-by-wire since this Tiger 1200 back in 2012. So they've really refined the technology, and the throttle response on this motorcycle, it's great. But to be fair, the old 2013 through 2016 Daytona 675R had great throttle response too. But this still feels every bit as good as a mechanical setup, and that's a compliment. The ride-by-wire throttle allows for adjustable riding modes. So we have sport, rain, track, and a rider preference setting where you can adjust the electronics to your liking. Now, electronics, let's just say Triumph has a ways to go in the electronics department. These electronics on this vehicle are very rudimentary compared to the electronics that are outfitted on a modern sport bike. So we have traction control. It is traction control adjusted by riding mode, but the inputs that the traction control system uses are more limited. So we have wheel speed sensors, we have throttle position, we have gear position, and that is how it calculates wheel slip and provides correction. Where these days, all modern sport bikes, if you want to be a true player in the TC game, you have to have an IMU with good programming. If you don't have that, you're just wasting time. So Triumph has some catching up to do in the rider safety aid. Still, it is nice that this motorcycle has fixed always on ABS, it has some level of traction control, and it has adjustable power and throttle maps that are tied to the setting you have. You adjust each setting via this M button here on the left hand side clip-on. The color TFT dash is new. This isn't something they had on the previous Daytona 675R. I don't think they were invented yet. And the dash looks good. It could be brighter, and the angle of it is tilted too far downward, so it's actually kind of hard to see. It needs to be angled more upward. I like this dash display. It looks nice. It's fairly easy to use, but I don't really like the riding modes. I wish you could just select things with a more conventional setup, like power mode 1, power mode 2, power mode 3, that kind of thing, or A, B, C, D. These riding modes tied to like rain or track are just kind of silly to me. I'd rather just have a more alphanumeric adjustment setup. Now this Daytona 765 Moto2 limited edition has a 4.6 gallon capacity fuel tank. We've averaged right around 35-36 miles per gallon, but to be fair, we've been wailing on this thing kind of hard. Right now we're going slow because there's traffic, but we spent a good amount of time on some nice back roads. So some nice back roads where we were able to wick up the throttle. The roads weren't closed off by the CHP for us, unfortunately, but we didn't have any traffic, and we were really able to hold her wide and feel the handling of this bike. And this bike, I just love the handling of this thing. It's very nimble, it's very stable at speed. With a full tank of fuel, this bike weighs in right around 410 pounds, right around 410. Triumph claims a dry weight of 363 pounds, but if you just do the math, 4.6 gallons of fuel at 6 pounds each, another 1 gallon of engine oil at 8 gallons, and then half a gallon of engine coolant at 8 gallons again, and then the weight of a battery. You can do the simple math in your calculator and get a good estimate of what this bike would weigh wet. And that's right around 410 pounds, which is lighter than the old Daytona 675R. Now, much of the reason why this bike is lighter is because it uses all carbon fiber bodywork. That's weird. Quick shifter to quick shifter. All carbon fiber bodywork. Everything. Even these inner fairings are carbon fiber. Even the tail section and the chain cover is all carbon fiber. It looks really nice and gives the motorcycle a very nice aesthetic appeal. You have to remember the styling of this motorcycle is the same as the outgoing Daytona 675R. So having this carbon fiber, it literally makes me think that the bike's all new, even though it's not. We talked about the handling and how this thing is a little ripper. Now, for this particular vehicle, Triumph, they tweaked the rake and trail. So the steering head on this bike is a little bit more relaxed. So I remember the previous 2013 to 2016 Daytona 675R. God, that thing would turn on a dime. Well, this thing still turns on a dime, but it's got a hint more stability. Now, I'm not sure if Triumph modified the rake via triple clamps or if they actually changed the steering head of the frame. They say this frame and the swing arm is different, but they wouldn't elaborate. And I know this top clamp is different. This is a different top clamp shape than the 2013-2016 Daytona 675R. But a little bit added stability isn't a bad thing. Now, this Moto2 limited edition rolls on Ovalline's suspension. We have an NIX generation fork and a TTX generation shock. TTX refers to the separate chambers that the compression and rebound damping circuits have. they have separate chambers to allow for more accurate adjustment. A typical shock body, when you adjust the compression and rebound circuits, they work, even though they're different circuits, they play with each other. So if you adjust the compression, you're going to adjust the rebound just a tad. This TTX type shock separates that, so you have more consistent compression and rebound damping. For most street riders, you won't ever notice the difference, but really good racers and high-end track riders would be able to feel that difference. Now, this suspension, when it came out for the 2013 model year, it was absolutely awesome. And it still is awesome. It has really good action. There's a good range of adjustment. But realistically, the suspenders on this motorcycle are 8 years old. 8 years old. So, you figure it out. Now, this engine is equipped with an electronic up and down quick shifter. There's also a slipper clutch, and the gearbox on this motorcycle, it feels nice. Each gear change is very secure. I love the speed of the quick shifter. It generally functions well. It isn't as sluggish as other electronic quick shifters that other street bikes use, but I wouldn't say it's any faster than a good high-end quick shifter that comes equipped on pretty much any modern superbike. It's no better nor worse than that, which is a good thing. The auto lip downshift, that is a big deal for me. I love the added stability of the motorcycle when you're entering corners and downshifting. It really keeps that rear tire hooked up to the asphalt and keeps that suspension in the stroke where it needs to be for me to have good feel and good handling. We're cruising at 78 miles per hour, even though there is ride-by-wire. Strangely, Triumph did not add cruise control. They totally could have, I think, pretty easily, but they left cruise control out of this motorcycle. Cruising at 80 miles per hour, this engine has not much vibration at this RPM, but you give it a couple downshifts and get it revving around 8, and it really starts to buzz. You can feel the vibration through the foot pegs, through the clip-ons at above 8,000 RPM. You keep the engine short shifted, keep it below that though, it's very, very smooth. And that's where the engine really shows its age, is in the level of vibration it has. It could be faster. I mean, no doubt that this 765cc motorcycle is quick. It's good torque, sounds awesome. But compared to a modern sport bike, it just feels a little sluggish. Triumph claims 128 horsepower out of this thing. I'd expect right around 116 horsepower. Last time we dyno tested this bike back, 10 years ago during our shootout, where, if I do recall, this bike actually won, or the Daytona 675 won our Super Sport Shootout 9. If my memory serves me correctly, it won that shootout and it made right around 110 horsepower. So I'd say this thing's good for probably right around 116. Alright guys, we forgot our turn. We're gonna go right here. Perfect. Love the sound of this bike. Let's let her eat. She's eating, guys. Yeah. Sorry, I get carried away on these motorcycles. It just sounds so awesome. So definitely not the fastest thing on the road, but it is enough power to excite you, and the sound and character are straight up awesome. Now, brakes on this motorcycle. This vehicle rolls on a set of Brembo Stelima radial mount 4-piston calipers. This is Brembo's latest and greatest sport bike radial mount caliper. I love these calipers. I love these calipers. Not only do they look cool, but they're super rigid. You can really literally feel the rigidity when you're leaning on the front brake lever. You can just feel those calipers just bite into the discs with like no flex. Love the calipers. I also love this Brembo MCS adjustable ratio radial mount master cylinder. These master cylinders debuted a few years ago, and some of the OEs are now adopting them, including Triumph. This master cylinder is so neat because you can literally adjust the lever ratio, and the lever ratio is the amount of power that the master cylinder is putting into the hydraulics circuit to use those front brakes. So the front brakes on this motorcycle they are insanely powerful. They're insanely powerful, and the feel is exquisite too. I'm gonna slam on the brakes here real quick. There's no one behind me, but I just show you how awesome they are. God, they're awesome. They're so awesome. I love these brakes. God, it was fun. The brakes work really good on this motorcycle. Again, I did that making sure there was not a vehicle behind me for safety reasons, folks. Now, ABS. Again, the ABS on this motorcycle, it works well, but it's just way too intrusive compared to a modern IMU powered sport bike setup. So nice that it has ABS, but very, very intrusive even at a street pace. Still, I do like these brakes a lot. I just love the stopping power and the feel they have. I also like the response of the rear brake. I love a nice rear brake that has good feel and good bite when you press on the pedal. So good job, Triumph. Now, as you can see by the top of this yoke, this is a limited edition vehicle. Triumph Motorcycles UK is manufacturing 765 units for North America and 765 units for the world. Now, these vehicles are made in Hinckley, England. Hinckley, England is where these motorcycles are assembled. They have parts that come from all over the world, and they do all their own engine machining in-house in Hinckley, and they do final assembly in Hinckley too. So that's a cool, fun factoid for you guys. This bike also comes with a 2-year unlimited mileage warranty. That is the Triumph difference. And these motorcycles are very well put together. Even though this is an old bike, the fit and finish on it is supreme. It's very well put together. And I'm just such a big fan of this carbon fiber. It just looks awesome. Now, we talked a little bit about the suspension, and the suspension calibration is a little bit on the stiffer side, especially in terms of spring rate. You definitely feel the jolts. The OE setup on this bike is a little bit peculiar because it has a lot of spring, but then the damping is a little bit light. But you can always adjust that with a Allen key head here for compression. You can also adjust the preload on the spring with, I think this would be a 12 millimeter socket or wrench here on top of the fork leg. Alright guys, let's get this thing. I love that auto blip downshifter. Stop on a dime brakes and away we go. Rear view mirrors, I didn't mention it, but I do like the rear view mirrors on this bike. They have a good surface area and I can really see what's going on behind me very well. And the engine vibration, as long as you keep the engine below 8,000 RPM, isn't too much to tax the vibration of the view of the mirrors. That was interesting. That person just ran that stop sign, and that police officer didn't say anything. Oh well. Now, we spent some time riding this motorcycle after dark, and the halogen bulb headlights, they do a decent job of illuminating the road ahead, but they're just, for the price of this vehicle, it absolutely for sure should have LED lights. Honda's Grom, which costs $4,000, has LED headlights. So to me, there's absolutely no reason why this vehicle wouldn't have LEDs, especially for its price at $17,500. Maintenance on this motorcycle. Now, Triumph's 675 and now 765 cc engine was ahead of its time when it came out for the 2006 model year. It was compact, had good durability. This motorcycle goes 4,000 miles between oil changes. I'm sorry, 6,000 miles between oil changes. 6,000 miles between oil changes, and every 12,000 miles you need to inspect the camshaft gears, the camshaft timing, and inspect the valves. So 6,000 mile oil changes and 12,000 mile valve inspections, which is pretty normal in the motorcycle industry. So it's good to know that when you buy a Triumph Sport motorcycle, you'll have something that'll stand the test of time and really go the distance. Well, folks, that was a fun day riding Triumph's 2021 Daytona 765 Moto2 limited edition. This thing reminded me why I liked the original Daytona 675 and 675R so much. It was like getting up to speed on an old friend, literally. I love the powertrain on this motorcycle. It is compact. It sounds absolutely awesome. It has good torque, good power character. You really feel those 3 power pulses through the right twist grip. The chassis, it still handles like it always did. It's a very sharp handling motorcycle. It has a more conventional sport bike feel. So if you were a 2010s type sport bike rider, you're gonna like the overall way this motorcycle fits you. All right, folks, let's do some Q&A on the old Instagram machine. Let's go up to the top here, guys. Top comments, how about that? Top comments, that's what we want. I need it. Yep, I need one too. Fan of the Triumph, but it has the looks of a 1991. Well, it's not 1991, but it definitely is 2013. This motorcycle has styling of an 8-year-old bike. You know, minus the awesome carbon fiber bodywork and the awesome aero exhaust. This is an old-looking motorcycle, no doubt. Why didn't they just make a new Daytona instead? Well, because making a new Daytona sport bike would cost realistically tens of millions of dollars to build a new sport bike, so they're not going to do that. This or the Gixxer 750, which would you choose? Well, I'm a longtime Gixxer 750 guy. I love those bikes. For bang for the buck, Gixxer 750, no doubt. This is still a cool bike, but just not for the MSRP. This or a 899 Panigale. Oh gosh, it's been a long time since I rode an 899 Panigale, but I love that bike too. That bike you could probably buy for pretty inexpensively on the used market. I'd probably gravitate toward that. What's the actual top speed of this bike? We didn't get a chance to test that, but I would assume this bike will probably go right around 168, 170 miles per hour. That's probably about as fast as it'll go. All right, folks, let's do one more question. Is it true that if you hit 88 miles per hour, you go back in time to when the design was current? Ha 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 ha. Very funny, very funny. All right, would I spend my money on this motorcycle. I would not, even though I like the engine character and the looks and the handling and the brakes of this motorcycle. $17,500 is just way too much for this vehicle. Yes, it's cool that it has carbon fiber bodywork. Yes, it's cool that it's an official Moto2 replica. I like all that stuff, but you're just not getting the performance you need for $17,500. Well, folks, that's a wrap from today's MC Commute. Make sure to surf on over to motorcyclistonline.com. That's where all of my content lives. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Thumbs it down if you thought it was stupid. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for riding with us today.